welcome our special guests, please allow me to say thanks to our generous sponsors for making today possible. Michael Best and Michael Best Strategies, Excel Energy, Marquette University and the Les Aspin Center for Government, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the Wisconsin Transportation Builders Association. The Wisconsin Alumni Association is an event series partner. So thanks to all of them.
Let me take it out of here. You want on the left?
With that, our guest probably doesn't need a huge introduction, but I'll give you a little background. Congressman Bryan Steil was first elected in 2018 to represent Wisconsin's 1st congressional district. He serves as chairman of the Committee on House Administration, which oversees federal election law, House of Representative operations, legislative branch oversight, and Capitol security. He's also a member of the House Financial Services Committee. He's worked in Wisconsin's manufacturing industry. He's also served on the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents. So, since he's mic'd up, what we'll do, I'm going to ask him questions for a little bit, then I'm going to throw questions to you. I've got 2 amazing intern students who are going to run the mic, so if you do have a question, wave your hand so I can see you, and then we'll kind of go from there. But with that, please join me in welcoming Congressman Steil to the stage.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Hi.
Thanks for having me in.
Thanks for being here. So, for folks who know me, you know I study marriage engagements.
Look at the time. No.
So anyone who thought we'd start with talking about the government shutdown, the fall agenda, anything like that might be a little disappointing. Not just talking about Taylor Swift here, but I hear congratulations are in order.
Thank you very much. Yeah. No, in August I got engaged, and so engaged before Taylor Swift.
Before
so look at
Taylor
that.
Swift.
There you go.
Before Taylor Swift. Are you a Swiftie? Does it feel strange, like planning a wedding at the same time?
I have no idea anything about Taylor Swift, and so I try to actually stay off social media, believe it or not. But I was informed of that later.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually, to get engaged, I actually went as far away as you possibly could from any form of social media. So I went up. For people that are familiar with the northern Wisconsin, we were up in Manitowish River on a kayak trip in the middle of nowhere where you can't get cell phone reception and there's no other people. And to me, that is where I'd rather be than on Twitter.
Fair enough. Was she surprised?
She was. She jokingly said, and she posted it so I could say it, but we went out kayaking, and so there was like no shower, no hair, no makeup, right? Like off we went, and then there's nobody there. So to get a photo, I had to be like my attempt at like MacGyver, which was like get a log, take my Gatorade bottle, put it on timer, and run around. And it was like 15 tries. And I was like, all right, we got a photo that works, good enough. Then we went back and like enjoyed our time. So it's awesome.
She's from Minnesota, right?
She's a Packers fan from Minnesota. And so once you find a Packers fan from the state of Minnesota, you're like, all right, lock this up quickly. You also, Vikings fans have no idea what to do with a ring. And so, like a Packers fan, you're like, okay, they know what to do with a ring, so it feels like a good year.
He totally knew where I was going
Vikings
there.
Fans in this venue. Can't we?
He totally knew where I was going there. Well, that's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I would love to talk about this until like a
But
potential government shutdown.
We could turn this on and do a full inquisition on the other side.
I got married this summer too, so I've got lots of advice for you, or not. But no, we could talk about the shutdown deadline, about engagements. But since I'm guessing a lot of you here want to actually talk about other things, we can talk about the shutdown. Let's switch. Congress just returned.
Yeah.
What is the fall agenda looking like? Are we going to see a shutdown? Well, how's this going to play out?
I'm hopeful that we don't. The spending process in Washington, D.C. is absolutely broken. It's been broken for decades. And so this is nothing new. Every single year it feels like Congress puts ourselves in the position of running up against this clock. Sometimes it's done more than once a year, and it just tells you that the underlying system is totally broken. As you noted in the intro, before I ran for Congress, I worked in the manufacturing sector for 2 great Wisconsin companies for about a decade. In the manufacturing side, if you produce a terrible product, you stop the line, you figure out what's wrong with the process, and you improve it. In Congress, we just repeat a bad system. And so I think there's a lot of reforms that we should be making on how we spend taxpayer money. So that's step 1. Step 2 is that's not going to occur in the next 4 weeks. And so I am hopeful that we position ourselves to avoid a shutdown. In the Senate, under Senate rules, it's going to require Democrat and Republican votes. And so the key here is that folks on the Democratic side come to the table with us to avoid that, and I'm optimistic that we'll be positioned to avoid it. I'd rather not be in the situation to even discussing it with 4 weeks to go, but the political reality and just the reality of where we are is that we're going to chase up against another deadline, frustratingly.
So we chase up. Will we hit it?
Yeah, I think we'll get the. I'm in the view, and I'm optimistic, and I encourage my conversations with folks is let's get ourselves in a position well ahead of the deadline. Mind you, it's 4 weeks, so call it in 2 to 3 weeks that we pass. Will probably have to be another continuing resolution. Again, I don't like the situation, but I'd rather have that than a shutdown. Although the brinksmanship that plays out is frustrating for everybody, but it looks a lot like a Major League Baseball trade deadline, right? Like what happens? Everybody brings it right up to the deadline, and then the trades are made. We're just better served as a country if we get this done sooner, but again, is going to be a brinksmanship because this does require Republican and Democratic votes at the end, and people are leveraging their position. But I'm hopeful at the end of the day that we get a continuing resolution, and then we actually get our spending bills in place, which is super important across the board, but uniquely important in the area of national defense.
So I'm sort of watching this battle between like the branches of government with President Trump. We see the battle between the executive branch, the legislative branch with his like pocket rescission, the court decisions being ignored, all of that. Is this going to be a unifying issue for the House where it's not necessarily Republican versus Democrat and versus compared to legislative branch versus executive branch? Like, will this get it through? Will this hold it up? How's that playing out?
Yeah, these tensions have existed since the beginning, right? When George Washington came into office, there was immediate tensions between Article 1 and Article 2. Those continue today, right? So we could go back, we could look at the Biden administration, strong arguments between Article 1 and Article 2, ultimately determined to be unconstitutional. Biden's attempt to shift the burden of student debt from the borrower to all taxpayers, determined to be unconstitutional not once but twice. The Trump administration is also flexing Article 1 authority in the way that many past presidents have. The courts are engaged. The courts will ultimately determine where that divide is between Article 1 and Article 2. As a legislator, I'm of the view that Article 1 authority is essential because I think that your elected representatives in the House and the Senate are closest to the people. They're the most responsive to the people, and I always like the authority to remain in Article 1.
Is that part of your law school education talking too? Like how do you, because
no, I'm just
like,
a nerd.
You've got the law
I'm a policy nerd,
okay.
and I accept the term. But it's also a reality, right? I would say, like, there's the Washington, D.C. salute is this and this, right? Like, I don't know, and it's their fault. And the Washington, D.C. salute, or any elected representative, the salute should be this, right? Is like, it's me. And to get us back to that, you got to re-enshrine a lot of the authority in Article 1. And we saw the Supreme Court set this up a year ago now with the ending of Chevron deference, right? Which says, actually, Congress has a lot of this authority. It doesn't reside in the executive. It re-empowers Congress to take back control. There are some individuals in Congress that don't want that control because they want that Washington, D.C. salute, right? Don't come to me if you don't like it. It's these guys, or I don't know. It should be right here. And that is really important in a democracy, that you have access to your elected leaders. It would be harder for you to get the President of the United States to come and join you here with WisPolitics at the AT&T Center than it is to get your home state congressman. Well, the more you empower your elected leaders, Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter, right? Senate or House, you're far more likely to get access to be able to have those types of conversations, say, this is how this impacts the city of Milwaukee. This is how this is playing out in the North Woods of Wisconsin. This is the impact to the dairy industry. And so we want people to come and empower those elected leaders because they're closer to the people, and rightfully so. And so that's my broader view, and I think it's just a healthy part of democracy. And then the electorate holds those individuals responsible every 2 or every 6 years, and I think that overall is a really good thing.
Good thing. So as you're hearing from constituents and thinking about the law degree and whatnot, and the legislative process, the judicial process, we saw tariffs.
Yeah.
Courts have ruled on that. What are you hearing from constituents back in the district in terms of, are you seeing effects on businesses within your district from these tariffs? Like, Is Christmas going to be Christmas? What's
Well, I think you get a mix. I think a lot of people understand that trade agreements that have been put in place decades ago by the United States have not always played out to the benefit of workers and farmers in the state of Wisconsin. And so we can go all the way back and look at trade deals that were made with China when China economically was a fraction of its current size. And a lot of people bought into, I think now proven false, but the false notion that if we engaged with China in XYZ way, that China would leave their dictatorship, enter a democracy, and be a productive and democratic society in the world of nations. Not true. And so what I think we're looking at is saying, okay, what really played out is China was given access to the U.S. market, maybe even beyond what was agreed to in the treaties, but the U.S. was not given access to the Chinese market in the way that we were promised. That's not fair to U.S. workers, U.S. farmers. So what we need to do is have a broader analysis in holding our trading partners across the globe accountable, and the real abuser here is China. And so my common advice with the administration and conversations that I have is let's strike trade deals with our allies, Western Europe, Japan, Korea, Australia, and others, and then work with our allies to truly address the abuse that's occurring in China, and it's intellectual property theft, it's a lack of access into the Chinese market, it's China's foreign policy. We could go down a list. But China is our biggest geopolitical challenge. We could talk about Russia as well, but from an economic standpoint, China is our biggest geopolitical challenge, and working with our allies to get there, I think there is strong unified support. In some of the specific tariffs, there's challenges to some of the industries in the state of Wisconsin, which is why I continue to encourage that we are well served if we strike trade deals with our allies so that we can then collectively work to address the threats from China.
As you think about China and you watched the parade this morning with Russia and was it North Korea, what was going through your head as you're talking about like, oh boy, these are,
well, I think
we're our allies?
No, it's a great point. It shouldn't be lost on anybody that there are hostile nations across the globe that are happy to work together to the detriment of Western democracy in the United States of America. And it was put on display as you have Putin and Xi and Kim together. That's a real threat to Western democracy. It's a threat to the United States of America. And so the sooner we work with our allies, again, to strike trade deals, to address the economic threats that are coming from China, to continue to work to hold Russia accountable, and either the tariffs or the sanctions as it relates to Russia are important there, and holding even some of our reasonably friendly countries accountable for their continued financial support of Russia, I think is totally appropriate.
We've seen immigration also dominating in the headlines. On one hand, you've got that. On the other hand, you've got farming and the dairy industry being extremely critical to Wisconsin. The ag and dairy industry need workers. They don't have access to the H-2A program because the program's seasonal. Like, what's your take on the outlook for getting these farmers the help they need? How would you go about it?
Great. It's a great question because we've had a broken legal immigration system and a broken illegal immigration system previously. And the broken illegal immigration system, I believe, prevented us from solving the broken legal immigration system. So as you look at the last 2 years of the Biden administration, you see a massive spike on the number of illegal immigrants entering the United States of America and causing real challenges across the board, whether that's human trafficking, drug trafficking, impacts in the labor market, et cetera. Now you have the Trump administration come in, dramatically change policies of the border, end catch and release, end abuse of the parole system, reinstate stay in Mexico, restart border wall construction, and the number of illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border has dramatically reduced, possibly net negative immigration in the United States. Control at the U.S.-Mexico border and the control of the illegal immigration problem sets us up to address the broken legal immigration system. If we go back to the end of Trump's first term in 2020, President Trump put forward a proposal that would revise how we look at the broken legal immigration system, in particular as it relates to ag, to truly tie out legal immigrants coming to the United States with true workforce needs. And so I think there's a real opportunity with the success that we've had at addressing the broken illegal immigration system to put in place new immigration laws to address the broken legal immigration system, to address things that are exactly as you noted. Our ag visa program doesn't work well for non-seasonal ag industries. In dairy, my grandma grew up on a dairy farm in Lafayette County. Dairy is by definition to solve the problem that you're asking about.
But like you said, it is 7 days a week, 365 days a year, so they don't exactly have time to wait, right? Where solving some of these problems can, as we've seen, can take a really long time. What do you think is a timeline to get this moving where the dairy farmers have the staff that they need?
There's a lot of work ongoing today in Congress. I think what you will see is in the not too distant future proposals begin to move forward. Washington, D.C. does not operate at the speed of business. Is one of my personal frustrations with this town, but I only Republican votes, and so this is going to be an area where folks are going to have to come to the table on both sides of the aisle. But it is something I think we have an opportunity to get broad support on because of the success of addressing the broken illegal immigration system.
Sticking in Wisconsin, the president intends to send National Guard troops to Chicago. Last week in La Crosse, Vice President J.D. Vance said the administration would love to send troops to cities like Milwaukee. Yesterday, the Milwaukee Police Association president said he would welcome that. Mayor Cavalier Johnson is here, and I asked him earlier, and he said, no, sir, Bob, I do not want them in Milwaukee. Milwaukee, would you support them being sent to Milwaukee?
So I flew back to Washington, D.C. at the start of the week, probably like most people in this room who are Wisconsin natives, and came back. And I will tell you, in my 3 days of being here, the number of people who have on their own come to me and said, this city feels safer than it was at the end of July is unbelievable. And there is a noticeable and real difference, and that's anecdotal conversations that I've had, but it also shows up in the crime data. And so I think that sense of safety is important in addition to the crime data that we see showing that the city is safer. Everybody has a right to feel safe in their home community, absolutely everyone. And I think it's imperative that we are providing the resources needed in all of our cities to reestablish public safety. And we saw from going back about 5 years, we saw a dramatic increase in crime in some of our nation's largest cities. We saw elected leaders not stand with the men and women of law enforcement. And I think what we saw as a result of that is crime dramatically spike in many of our cities. And so what we need to do is work to provide resources in our largest cities, but also smaller communities as well, to make sure that they can reestablish public safety. And crime in many ways operates in a way like a disease. And so you need to attack it, you need to get it under control, and as you do that, you actually then in the future will need fewer resources to maintain that lower level of crime. And so spiking resources into locations does have real world benefits that then as those additional resources depart, the current force level could maintain that level of public safety. But I do think it's imperative that we're providing the resources to communities across the country to make sure that people who live there feel safe, because it's a real belief to me that absolutely everyone has a right to feel safe in their home community.
So you would spike the resources, put National Guard in Milwaukee so people feel safe?
I won't get in the lane of the mayor, and he's here, and he can speak to how he would like to address it. What I'm saying is I think it's absolutely appropriate that we're looking at providing resources to communities that want the resources such that they can maintain public safety in their communities. We could step out of Milwaukee for a minute. We could look at another example, take it into my district, into the city of Kenosha, when riots broke. And the governor Governor Evers failed to provide adequate resources to the community of Kenosha. And then after 3 horrific nights and killings and him denying resources that were offered to him by President Trump, then those resources flooded into the city, including federal agents out of Chicago and other locations. Public safety was reestablished, and the city of Kenosha is a great family, hardworking community with a crime level. We'd love to see it go lower, but not with a uniquely high crime level, right? We'd like to see it go lower. And so I think it's looking and saying, how do we leverage all resources available to reestablish public safety? I think you can look at the data in Washington, D.C. that says if you flex resources into an area, you can get real world results to bring crime down.
So it might be one of these 30-day exemptions that they're talking about, and then get them out of your
It
district.
ultimately won't come before the legislative side. This is the executive working with the executive. And again, I won't speak for the mayor who's here. I'll let him speak for himself. But I do think it's reasonable to make sure that those resources are available for communities that determine they need them.
Speaking of resources we want, FEMA, we lost the last day of the Wisconsin State Fair with the historic flooding that we saw. I know you've been a strong advocate for leading the Wisconsin delegation in asking President Trump for a major disaster declaration to receive federal assistance. Are you frustrated? I'm frustrated this hasn't happened yet. Are you frustrated this hasn't happened yet?
Let's break
do we
down.
have updates?
No, it's a great question, because I want government to operate at the speed of business, but the process involved here is longstanding. And so with the preliminary damage assessment in the broader Milwaukee area at the state level is not actually yet complete. And so what the governor did, and I support this, what the governor did is filed for the Milwaukee area to be declared a national disaster in advance of the preliminary damage assessment from being complete. That occurs on occasion, often in the instance of hurricanes and earthquakes, natural disaster events, that there's overwhelming damage. I'm of the view that what occurred in Milwaukee has the evidence of that overwhelming damage, where this declaration could be made in advance of the preliminary damage assessment being done. Again, that's not yet done. I'm supportive of the governor moving forward. FEMA is in the process currently of reviewing that. I've encouraged them to move as quickly as possible. It's my hope that is moved forward quickly, that the president is able to make this declaration in advance of the preliminary damage assessment from being complete. But all of these processes take some level of time for the review and the documentation of what that actual expense is, whether or not that is Milwaukee County or the city of Milwaukee or Hales Corners in the 1st Congressional District, where they expended additional resources, say, for debris removal. They got to document that, make sure that those expenses are appropriate. They are, in my opinion, but it's reasonable to make sure that review takes place, and then for that federal reimbursement to come. But I'm going to continue to push the administration and FEMA to move as quickly as possible.
Do you think it's delayed in part because we've lost so many employees at FEMA and the federal government?
No.
Shouldn't this be happening already?
No, again, the governor, and I support this, the governor filed in advance of the preliminary damage assessment from being complete. And so we're actually ahead of regular order. And so it's not a slowness on any given part. There's a lot of work to document correctly so that federal taxpayer dollars are not going to criminals or to waste, fraud, and abuse, that they're going to the people that were negatively impacted, into municipalities or local governments that have expended resources. Again, debris removal is an easy example of this. But again, the governor moved in advance of that preliminary damage assessment from being completed. I support his move to do that, and now FEMA is making that review and assessment. All of us would like this to operate at the speed.
Have a good camaraderie around this. I've been kind of wondering about that. We haven't seen as much of some of that. Thinking about divisions, the town halls sort of give another image of division. I know back in March, it's rumored that the NRCC even recommended members not hold in-person town halls, go virtual. You've been told not to, you do it anyway. You continue to try to hold these. Why?
Maybe go back to Mayor, but I think it's important to be available and accessible to people to be able to ask questions. And there's no bad questions. Ask a question. We may not walk away agreeing at the end of the day on the answer, but if you don't begin that dialogue between folks who have different worldviews, you're never going to get to a spot to move the country forward. And if you look at the example of my town hall, there's a small number of agitators that want to be disruptive. And that was the case in Elkhorn. And it's actually too bad for the people that wanted to come to engage in a productive dialogue. And that doesn't mean they need to agree with me. It just means a productive dialogue. It's fine if somebody wants to stand up and say, I think we should double taxes. I'll say, I disagree with you, but let's begin the conversation. It's different when somebody boos the Pledge of Allegiance, did a Nazi salute. I mean, we saw some real fringe activity. But I will offer, inside the Democratic base right now, there are some real fringe agitators that have broad support. We could look at who the mayoral candidate is in the city of New York with Mamdani, who's supporting government-run grocery stores. You could look at play out at my town hall. And again, it wasn't the whole room. Maybe I had 400 or 500 people there, depending on how you count. We had people that were, cheering for me. We had people that were, that disagreed with me. That's fine. And then you had a subset of individuals that were truly radicalized and wanted to make a spectacle. And that's really too bad for our broader democracy. Again, you have to be able to have a productive conversation about the issues before us. And it's okay to disagree. That's totally normal. But I think it's really important that you engage in those policy conversations. I've held dozens and dozens of town halls. Most of mine are broadly productive. The one in Elkhorn was maybe a little disappointing just because there was a handful of kind of fringe agitators that wanted to be disruptive. But that doesn't deter me. That doesn't discourage me. If anything, it says that we need to have more conversation about what's needed to get this country back on track at a period of time when so many people aren't fully satisfied with where we are.
And they'll take that satisfaction level to the polls. We've got some elections coming up. You're one of about 35 House seats the Democrats want to flip, although the last check, the Cook Political Report had your seat remaining likely Republican. How is your race shaping up? I know Governor Evers isn't running for another turn. Axios reported last night Congressman Tiffany is leaning towards getting into the race. What are you hearing? Do you have a favorite? All kinds of Wisconsin election. I'll just let you take that where you want to.
Maybe I'll take them in order. So, I'm planning to run for re-election to the House, and I'm planning to win. My seat, or the seat in the 1st Congressional District I have the honor of representing, is been targeted since I first ran in 2018. When I first ran in 2018, my opponent spent about $8.9 million against me. I think I spent 2.1 or 2.2. So it was about a 4-to-1 being outspent. When you take all the outside my bill, about 2-to-1 that I was outspent. Last cycle, ballpark, $5 million was spent against me, and I won by about 10 points. And again, it tells me that money's not everything. I get it. The national politics, you look at the fundamentals of the district, this is a district that was drawn by Governor Tony Evers to lean further to the left than what it was, right? He carved up into Gwenmore's district. Gwenmore's district, mind you, at the time, actually needed to expand the number of voters. And so to show you how Governor Evers gerrymandered it, he went up and carved out voters out of Gwenmore's district to further reduce her, to try to make it have my district have more historical Democratic voters. I think what we actually see is it backfiring on Governor Evers' approach, because what I do is go and talk to folks regularly, whether or not that is a town hall in Elkhorn, whether or not that's a black church in Racine, whether or not that is a 4-H club in Rock County, and going out and talking to people about how conservative solutions address the challenges we face. And if you actually look at the state of Wisconsin, in the last presidential election, Harris got more votes than Biden in 7 out of 8 congressional districts, total cumulative votes. 7 out of 8 congressional districts, Harris outperforms Biden. Which congressional district did she not? The 1st congressional district of Wisconsin. And so what we are doing is turning southeast Wisconsin further and further to the right. Kenosha County is a perfect example of this. When I first ran, Kenosha County was viewed as a true blue county, right? Now, since 2018 to today, Samantha Kirkman, a Republican from the state assembly, wins county executive, being the first Republican elected county executive in Kenosha County. Kenosha County has a Republican sheriff. The district attorney's office in 2024 in Kenosha County went Republican for the first time since 1924. Calvin Coolidge was president of the United States the last time Kenosha County had a Republican as district attorney. And so what we're seeing is the 1st congressional district, southeast Wisconsin, moving to the right, and that leads to the success we see statewide, where President Trump won the state, and the success we see electorally. And I'm of the view that as we get to the next election, the only statewide being the gubernatorial, is we will have a Republican governor in the state of Wisconsin successfully elected in 26.
Do you have one that you prefer?
The primary will play out. I think we got great options at the table. Other people may still enter the race. I don't shy away from primaries. I think it's a competition of good ideas. And so I think we will have a really strong candidate ultimately selected by the voters. And I look forward to working for him or her.
Awesome. So you'll let the voters pick it out, and then you'll endorse. You won't endorse in the primary.
I haven't made a decision on that. I just don't. I don't have an announcement to make today. But I am confident that we will have a strong Republican candidate for governor, and I believe that that man or woman will ultimately be successful in the 26th election.
Cool. Well, let me ask you about the war on higher ed, and then I've got two helpers with mics, so if you have questions for the congressman, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll do that.
That's the rough math number. That is a good value if you go and get the right degree. So if you want to go graduate from high school and you want to go to UW-Whitewater and you want to get an accounting degree, that is a great investment if you walk out with an accounting degree. There are other universities around our country, so now let's leave the state of Wisconsin and go to another state that charge you an exorbitant amount of money for an educational product that doesn't lead to an economic benefit on the end.
So we have a very successful program right now through USDA for the regional project to have farmers reduce the amount of waste they put into the Milwaukee River system. Mm-hmm. Since January, when we had the money through the sewage district, the administration froze the money. Then they unfroze the money, and we were back in business. Now the money is frozen again because the Congress, in its wisdom, took all of the money away from IRA money from this project, but added money as mandatory money in the ag bill. And this is really, this is real wonkish territory.
So Bill Broderick, we're going to be like way in the weeds with you here. Keep going.
So the question is, will you help us try to take that new mandatory money and apply it to Milwaukee's system so we can continue to write farmers checks for doing conservation work and reducing the amount of pollution in the Milwaukee River?
We want our waterways to be clean. Happy to sit down and work with you, Bill. The goal here, we have a handful of things at play, right? So is the so-named Inflation Reduction Act came through and dramatically increased spending. We came in and said, okay, we got to get spending under control to bring inflation down, and then looked at ways where some of those programs make sense, and it sounds like this is one of them, where we went and said, how do you backfill this in other mechanisms? The Farm Bill has been a juggernaut that hasn't been accomplished now for far too long. We're overdue on getting the Farm Bill across the line. That's really important to the ag community to get that done. Congress has played the game of kicking the can down the road, and this has now been for a number of years. The Farm Bill hasn't been passed since before 2019. And so we have an opportunity to get the Farm Bill across the line, and then to make sure that we're working on Wisconsin. It sounds like the question, Bill, is weedy enough. I want to sit down and chat with you, but more than happy to work with you, because Wisconsin, one of the reasons we love the state of Wisconsin is we have some of the best fresh water anywhere in the world. That's very true in the city of Milwaukee. We got the mayor here as well. Industry, that's important too, but it's obviously important to people who are drinking water or using it in a recreational sense.
So one thing I've taken away from your talk so far is that you're frustrated with how slow government moves a lot of the time. But you also said that you were in favor of overturning Chevron deference, which, in my eyes, I think it's taking discretion away from the executive branch and requiring legislative and judicial to write more like descriptive regulations and also rule on them. Are you concerned that that's going to slow up government even more and kind of harm our ability to solve problems as they come up?
That is a great academic question. So is we overturn, and I spent a lot of time, so I chair the administration committee, which oversees kind of the structure and resources in Congress. It's kind of like an inside shifting of resources and funds. So I've spent a lot of time reviewing Chevron deference, which for everybody else in the room, if you don't live and breathe con law, it's simply saying that who has the authority when we're making all these rules? Does it sit over in the executive with unelected bureaucrats, or is it Congress that should have the biggest say? I don't think it slows us down. I think it forces the bureaucracy to be responsive to the true intention that Congress put forward when writing the laws. It also sets up an opportunity for Congress to be far more prescriptive when writing the laws, but also during the rulemaking process to engage. And so to give you maybe specifics on this, Congress in broad bipartisan support passed what's called the Genius Act, stablecoin legislation, which I led in the House, Senator Hagerty led in the United States Senate. Now the Securities and Exchange Commission and the CFTC are writing the rules as required under this legislation. So the end of Chevron deference doesn't mean that they won't be writing the rules quickly. They will be. But it also says as Congress gives feedback and input, we should be respected in that regards. And if somebody wants to sue because they don't like a rule that comes through, they're not immediately given such a heavy burden that effectively they're going to be automatically unsuccessful by challenging the administration. They should be able to have a seat at the table and explain why their position's right or why Congress's intent is on their side. And so I think it really puts power back with your elected leaders closest to the people, which was kind of my opening remark. But it's also really important that we don't provide additional authority and power to a lot of unelected bureaucrats. Many of them are good people. They just aren't responsive to the people.
Other questions? Stephanie?
Yeah, I'll try to speak loud.
Is getting the permitting process all the way through the system. And that doesn't mean weakening your environmental standards. It means accelerating the speed upon which we review it. And so we go back and we look at computer chip manufacturing, which Taiwan currently dominates. And we're looking at ways to onshore that and bring that into the United States. A little bit oversimplified, but directionally accurate here. If you want to open up a factory in Taiwan to produce computer chips, from idea to completion of all the permitting is about 18 months. In the United States, it can take you up to 7 years. So if you have an iPhone in your pocket like I do, or whatever phone of choice you have that probably costs a whole bunch of money, right? And you want to produce that in the United States, if you start today and you can't get it to 7 years, your technology is obsolete inside that window. And so we need to accelerate dramatically.
First and foremost, congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you.
Your MacGyver trick did work. I saw the picture of your beautiful fiance and yourself, so congratulations on that. Second of all, I wanted to thank you personally for signing on with your colleagues from the Wisconsin delegation, the letter to the president for disaster declaration for us in Milwaukee and the region. We really need it. I think we're going to continue to need your support in order to make that happen, to help the folks who have been affected by the flooding that we saw in Milwaukee. Third, even though I may disagree with the president and the vice president on deployment of National Guard troops to cities across the United States, including in Milwaukee, I think there are a whole host of programs that the city has historically worked with the federal government on to make substantive changes in Milwaukee, including those on public safety. And I would love to work with the President's administration to continue those sort of programs. Programs like the city police department working with the FBI, the ATF on task force in order to take actual criminals off the street. I'd love to continue working at that. Housing programs to make sure that folks find affordability and can find places where they're not on the street and have access to affordability. We've got very low vacancy rates in Milwaukee, so we need federal support there too. Opportunities to create more job opportunities so folks are self-sufficient that way. Programs where we work with young people, such as our Earn and Learn and Camp Rise program, making sure that those kids are on a positive trajectory in life and not putting themselves in a situation later on or being influenced later on to go into a life where they commit crimes and then go into the system that way. So I'd love to hear some of your comments about that, how we continue to work with the federal government on programs that have a lasting impact, such as the ones I just outlined.
Mayor, appreciate you being here. Appreciate our really productive relationship that we've had. Obviously, don't represent the city of Milwaukee per se, but 25% of the land in Milwaukee County. In the city of Milwaukee is such an essential aspect to the success of the state of Wisconsin, and would love to continue to work with you on a whole host of these ways that we can make Milwaukee the greatest city it can possibly be. And I know that's where your heart is as well. But making sure that we're getting essential resources into Milwaukee benefits the whole state. And making sure that those are operating effectively and efficiently, something I think we should totally continue to work on. In particular, as you said, some of the federal resources that come in to help keep Milwaukee safe. High-intensity drug trafficking areas is one that comes to mind. And that's a big challenge for Milwaukee as you think of that I-94 corridor from Chicago across the state line, impacting Racine and Kenosha County. into Milwaukee and then ultimately on its way to the Twin Cities. And so there's massive benefits by being on and well connected on the interstates. There's unique challenges as well. We should continue the dialogue to make sure that we're doing that for the benefit not just of the city but the whole state.